It's time to chill out and get ready for a mediocre Q&A live stream. If you're old enough, grab yourself your favorite adult beverage, and if you're not, stick with apple juice. Put your feet up and relax. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. And now let's cue up the intro music. Yo, welcome to the HVACR videos live stream. Hopefully you guys are doing well. Here I am going to mess with my microphone last minute and get it leveled and adjusted where I wanted it. So welcome to the stream. My name is Chris. For the new people here, I'm an HVACR service technician here in Southern California, and I happen to film some of my service calls, and then I post them as videos on YouTube, and you guys kind of get to learn from me, learn from my mistakes, learn from my triumphs, and maybe hear a few words of advice, right? I'm not a perfect technician. I've never claimed to be, nor will I ever be perfect, right? We all are human. We all make mistakes. I've made a lot of mistakes, and I've learned a lot from my mistakes. And I hope that some of my mistakes don't get repeated by you. And the idea is that I share those mistakes and explain and talk about them, whether it be in a video, whether it be on a live stream, telling stories, because coming up in the trade, I made a lot of mistakes, but back then, the customers were very forgiving, if that makes sense. And nowadays, it doesn't really work that way. I mean, it's really easy to lose a customer these days. So I'm hoping that maybe I can share some things and help other people to grow. You know what I mean? So that's the whole idea, right? And when I put these videos out on YouTube, and I've talked about this a lot, but when I first started putting these videos out, I felt like I would edit them and make them like, oh, I don't want to show that, and I don't want to show that because I messed that up, and then I started to feel like an imposter syndrome thing, and then I went back in and I started showing my mistakes, but I addressed them right at the end of the videos. I always find it comical, very comical, when people criticize, right? And it makes me laugh because someone will criticize something that I did in my video. First off, I have no problems with criticism. In fact, I grow from criticism. You know, if you, and you don't got to be a jerk about it, but of course, help me. You know, if I make a mistake or you know a better way, share it with me. But it is hilarious when people will criticize in a negative way, and then I can clearly tell they didn't watch the end of the video, because majority of the time I, you know, address all my mistakes, because as I'm editing these videos, I have to watch them over and over again. I remember the service call, and then I have to watch them in the editing process. And I usually find my own mistakes and I address them at the end. So I encourage people to watch to the end, because usually I'm there saying, hey, you know what? Did you guys catch this? I made this mistake, you know, that kind of stuff. But I'm not always perfect, and I still make a few mistakes that I don't even catch, right? And I appreciate that. We have a lot of great people and a lot of great viewers. And again, I'm completely open to criticism or advice. If someone thinks that they have a better way, shoot me an email, leave me a comment, whatever. I'm not afraid. I'm not embarrassed to have criticism or advice or, you know, tips or anything in the comments. I encourage people to put them in the comments, because then maybe other people can learn from them too, you know? So I am a totally open book over here, and not pretending to be anything that I'm not. So let's see what we got going on in the chat right now. As usual, we got a lot of amazing people in here. So thank you, everybody. It's awesome to be here. And I'm so humbled that y'all come back. It still blows my mind that you guys come to these streams and you listen to me ramble on and talk for however long. You know, I actually struggle, because when I go on, for instance, if you don't already know, I do another show with my friends called the HVAC Overtime Show. That's on Friday evenings on the HVAC Overtime YouTube channel. If any one of the mods can post a link to the Overtime channel, that'd be great. But yeah, you definitely want to subscribe to that. But I'm going to warn you right up front. If you don't like bad words, if you get easily offended, if you're from California, you probably don't want to watch the Overtime Show. No, I'm just kidding, but I'm serious at the same time. So, and here I am from California, right? But yeah, the Overtime Show is a very uncensored show. Picture it as 4 guys that just finished work on Friday. They went to the bar. They're 4 beers, 5 beers deep, and the conversation ensues. And sometimes it's HVAC, sometimes it's not. Majority of the time it's not. Sometimes it is. It rambles. Very ADHD related. Ironically, only 2 of us drink anymore. 2 of them are sober. So it's kind of funny how that works. But anyways, it's a good time and it's a great show, and, you know, cool to hang out with my friends. But the funny thing is that I'm so used to being on this stream that I struggle when I have other people on, right? I struggle when I'm on a stream with other people because I have a hard time with dead air. I don't like there to be quiet while I'm reading through comments or whatever. That's why I'm always like, oh, just reading through the comments, seeing what I'm missing here. Okay, cool. You know, just because for some reason dead air just messes with me. So when I go on other people's streams and there's dead air, like I start to panic, and then I tend to talk too much and overtake the conversation just because I don't want there to be dead air. It's just like a OCD thing or something. I don't know. Ironically, I'm going to be on the HVAC School podcast this Wednesday. So you might want to check that out if you guys are going to be there. And I'm going to try to be on my best behavior and not try to overtake the conversation, because there's going to be several other people talking and contributing. But yeah, that'll definitely be on a good thing to check out on the HVAC School YouTube channel. So let's see what we got going on in the chat. Matt Woodbridge says he's from California and he loves it. Well, you're rare. You're rare. No, I'm just kidding. Let me see what else we got going on in the chat. Reading through here. Are the FlexFit hats washable? Best way to get mastic off. Whew, man. Mastic is a tricky one. Yeah, they are washable for sure. But like I usually wash them in delicate to where they're not getting spun around inside the thing. If you have mastic, you might want to try some of the Refrigeration Technologies Viper wipes. Those might help to get something off, but I don't know. I don't think it'll mess with the color or anything like that. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to get mastic off. I don't know if you're talking about Henry 608 mastic, because if there's Henry 608 mastic, might as well just throw that hat away. If it's like duck butter or duck sealer or something like that, depending on if it's the water-based one, it might come off. It just depends. So, but yeah, I usually wash these. These hats are available on my website, hvacrvideos.com. We've got other merchandise. You see some t-shirts back there, sweatshirts, beanies, all that good stuff. Ray says wash them in the dishwasher. Yeah, that's a great way. They have like hat trays that they used to have that you could put them in the dishwasher. My washing machine has like ultra delicate where you can put it on there and it just basically soaks it or whatever. That's usually what I do. And then I let them air dry. I personally don't put the hat in the dryer. I just set them out, let them dry, and then go to town. So Joe Fiducioso says mastic equals new clothes. And ain't that the truth for sure? Mastic is forever. Yeah, for sure. The official term is Pookie, 100%. Dead air, new refrigerant. Don't know what you mean. What do you mean by dead air? Dead air means that it's like a radio term, you know, when it just goes quiet. That's dead air. That drives me nuts, like on a live stream or a podcast. But it's just my own thing. It's not so much that I get angry or upset if I'm on someone else's thing and there's dead air. It's like a creature. I'm a creature of habit, and I don't even mean to, but if there's nobody talking, I feel like I need to fill the void. Let me see. All right, cool. HVACR videos. All right, let's get into knowledge. As usual, well, sometimes I have it, sometimes I don't. So had a couple videos the last couple weeks, and things are picking up at work. We're starting to get a little bit busier. The days are getting warmer. We're in that weird transition phase right now. We've had a bunch of rain this last weekend. We're about to get a little bit more rain. I'm looking at the forecast. Let's see. Tomorrow, it's supposed to be 77 degrees for the high, 78 degrees on Wednesday, but the lows are 49 and 47. And then we got rain coming again on Friday, and our temps are dropping. So it's that weird spring weather where it's just kind of going up and then coming back down. They got a bunch of snow in the local mountains. So it's nice, but service calls are slowly starting to pick up. We're getting a little bit busier, and it's been kind of nice. I haven't been working a lot lately when, through the winter when it was a little bit slow. I've been doing stuff in the office and everything. So I kind of like just getting out and doing service calls. It's a lot of fun. What is Joe's last name? I don't know. I really don't know. No idea. Cool. Right on. So, I had a video where I went back out on an ice machine. The title of the video was "They Called Me Back for This Ice Machine." I wanted to address a few things. First off, in the video, the original video, I diagnosed some failed harvest valves or cool vapor valves. The particular machine that I was working on was a Manitowoc CVD, cool vapor defrost machine. Okay. It's a remote machine where the compressor's on the roof, there's an accumulator on the roof, and the condenser's on the roof. But you have a liquid line and liquid line and a suction line running between, but then you have a liquid line receiver downstairs in the ice machine head. And there's two harvest valves in there. Now, they are not hot gas defrost valves. Manitowoc does make a machine that has hot gas defrost too, but this is not it. This is the cool vapor defrost. So what it does is it has an extra port on top of the liquid line receiver, and it takes vapor refrigerant off the top of the receiver, and it runs it through two solenoid valves that are cool vapor solenoid valves. And those run through the evaporator and help to remove the ice from the evaporator. It's very common for those cool vapor valves to gum up. Stuff gets stuck inside of them. Sometimes the strainers get plugged up. In my case, I don't think it was the strainers because I pulled them out. They were a little bit dirty. But realistically, I think there's just something stuck inside of the valves, and it was just causing them not to work properly. But what's interesting on those cool vapor valves is that they are copper-coated stainless steel. So on the inside of the valves, which I don't know what I did with them. I thought they were in here, but who knows what I did with them. But anyways, on the inside of the valve, on the outside of the valve, the connection points are stainless steel. But on the inside, they use some sort of a process where it's copper-coated on the inside. So with that being said, when you are brazing those in, you do not need to use silver solder or high silver content solder, right? It's not like doing a stainless steel to a copper connection. They're actually designed, and there's specific instructions when you're installing the valves. When you used to buy them, they actually used to come with instructions on how to braze them in. And brazing them in is a little bit different, and I kind of explained it in the video, whereas you're going to take the heat and you're going to put it on the piece of copper that is inserted into the valve, right? You're going to heat up the copper, you're going to liquefy the solder right in front of the joint, and then you're going to draw it in with the heat and then apply a little bit more solder, and it's going to go in there. But you're not going to cap the joint. It's not going to go on the outside like a normal braze joint. You're not going to see that. You just have to know that the solder is flowing into the joint. So in that video, I talked about that. I got a lot of people saying, how come I didn't use silver solder? I should have just used silver solder and flux. Okay, so here's my opinion on the matter. Those valves were already brazed in with 15% silphos. That 15% silphos may or may not have been extremely clean. When I try to mix high bearing or high silver bearing solder, right? 56% silver solder and 15% silphos. I don't have very good experiences with that, right? And it just doesn't seem to work as well as I think it should. And I've had refrigerant leaks when I try to do that. So I don't like mixing the two solders. And because that valve was originally brazed in, or the existing valves were originally brazed in with 15% silphos, I just want to go back in with the same stuff. Okay. I don't see the need to put 56% silver solder on there. Okay. I don't see the need to use flux. There's no need, because if you're using silphos, there's phosphorus in the solder stick, and that solder stick already has a flux built into it because the phosphorus acts as a flux. So there's no need for that. And, you know, a lot of people ask questions, and that's the manufacturer's instructions. And now if it was a brand new joint, you know, I might consider using silver solder, right? Actual 56% silver solder. But the fact that it already had been brazed in before and we were just unsweating and putting new valves back in, I went back in with the normal 15% silphos. I can't tell you how many questions I got about that. Let's see what else we got going on there. It's still copper on copper. Yeah, it's still copper on copper. Exactly. Let me see what else we got going. Reading through the chat. You guys are funny right here. What can I say about Manitowoc and cold draft? Nothing really to say. Never worked on a cold draft machine myself. So, how can you tell the difference in what solder was used? Once you get really comfortable with it, you can look at a joint and you can tell whether or not it was actual, like a high silver content solder, like 56%. I can look at a solder joint and say that's Stay-Brite 8 or 15%. There's just a different color that happens with it, and you can kind of tell from the joint the way that the solder's on there. At least I personally. Let me ask the chat right now. In the chat, can you guys tell what type of solder for the most part was used on a braze joint just by looking at it? I'm kind of curious. Yes, no? Give me your experiences in the chat. Have I heard about RDT? They make a refrigeration condensing unit that can run multiple systems off of one digital compressor as well as a backup. RDT. No, I don't know if I've heard of RDT, but that sounds just like a multiplex condensing unit. It doesn't sound any different than what we would normally work with. I'm interested to know more about it. I'd be curious if you'd send me an email to hvacrvideos@gmail.com and I could do a little bit of research on it. What's a good box temp for a salad station? Typically 34 to 39 degrees with a constant cut-in temperature controller would be your best bet, because it's self-defrosting for a salad reach-in. But when you're using salad reach-ins, and I mean, are you actually putting salad in it? You got to be careful, because you don't want the air coming directly out of the evaporator coil blowing onto the lettuce, because it'll freeze the lettuce. So just something to think about. Just because you're maintaining 34 to 39 in the box means that, you know, your evaporator might be getting 15 to 20 degrees below the box temperature when it's running. So keep that in mind. Reading through the chat right now. 56% has a brass color. 100% true, Jason. Yes, that's what I see too. Reading through the chat right now. The shine. Yeah, that's exactly right. Are those valves heads replaceable? Yes or no? On the cool vapor valves, no, they are not. I don't think you can remove the head. You can't disassemble the valve. They are completely put together. You can change the coil or the stator. Yeah, the coil, I guess, is what it is. Yeah, you can change the coil. Yes, but not the. I was thinking it was an EXV, but it's not. It's just a normal solenoid valve. So yes, you can change the solenoid coil, but as far as the valve, you can't disassemble it and replace the internals. I don't think. No. Reading through. Steve from Everything HVACR says he can tell if it's not 15%. Yeah, exactly. For sure. So cool. All right, let me see what we got. How can you prevent or stop resetting a VFD after a storm? Mr. Green asks. Well, Mr. Green, you know, lightning can do a lot of damage, and there's only so much you can do to protect from lightning strikes and different things that can happen. So when it comes to VFDs, you need to make sure that, you know, there's proper protection put on the system. A good majority of the time, at least in my area, you know, they're buying the cheapest VFDs to run on their equipment. And yeah, you do have problems after lightning storms and different things like that. I would imagine if you had a higher quality VFD with proper filtering on it, you know, it would protect the power a little bit more, but I don't know how much you're going to actually protect against a lightning strike, because lightning strikes are just completely destructive. Hi, Isabella. How are you, sweetie? All right. Reading through in here. Is the drive going out on under voltage or over voltage? See, there we go. Jason's already jumping on it. Go for it, bud. Thank you. Reading through the chat. What am I missing here? What is my favorite VFD? Well, I don't really work on a lot of VFDs. I mean, they all kind of fail in the same way. The most of the VFDs that I'm working on are just in package units, and they all just buy bottom of the barrel VFDs and just lots of issues with them. So I really don't have a preference on a VFD. A VFD is a variable frequency drive. It's a way to basically, the easiest way to explain it, it's a way to speed up and slow down a motor. You can get into the scientific side of it. I'm not going to pretend like I completely am well versed in explaining the actual electrical stuff that's going on inside of a VFD, but they're going to speed up and slow down a motor, but then they're also going to have motor protection built into them to make sure that you're looking for voltage spikes, voltage drops, overcurrent situations. They can also help in startup and slowdown. They can be a soft starter where they slowly ramp the motor up. And they can do the same thing on shutdown. So they're really, really versatile when they're installed properly and have proper protection going to them to make sure that the power that's going into them is correct. But VFDs can fail at a very high failure rate if they don't have proper power conditioning coming into the building. And that's my experience. Most of my customers, they're not doing anything to protect the building. And just the power comes in, can be very dirty, and we can just run into all sorts of problems. So I agree, they can be efficient, they can help you to save energy, but I will also say that a good majority of the time, the VFDs, because they don't have proper conditioning and things to protect them, they're going to fail early or earlier than they should, and the cost to replace them basically washes out any energy savings, and that just becomes a problem. So let's see. Brian Sanders says his favorite VFD is the one that's bypassed. I mean, some people love that, I mean, I have quite a few VFDs that are bypassed. So California electric grid doesn't help 100%. Dave G says, why does my freezer keep running backwards? When the compressor goes one way, it gets cold. When it goes the other way, it gets warm. Can you call me for emergency service? Yeah, Dave, give me a call. I'll help you out. All right, let's see. Surge protection is needed. Yeah, but I mean, surge protection, even with lightning, though, I mean, how much is surge protection truly going to do? It rectifies alternating current, goes to a DC bus for ripple voltage, uses IGBTs as a simulated AC sine wave. There we go, Jason Johnson. So that's what Jason said. Do I prefer Carrier or Lennox when I'm replacing units? I mean, it really depends. I'm really comfortable working on both. My favorite equipment to work on is probably a Lennox package unit. So, if I can put in a Lennox, I will. But I'm not going to necessarily change the type of a unit. The more you change, when you change from brand to brand, the weirder the curb adapters have to get, and it just starts to make the roofs look really weird. It's a curb adapter is not just ugly. Majority of the time, the curb adapter is going to be a massive pressure drop in the airflow of the system. So because they have to move ductwork and ducts and different things inside of a curb adapter, because that's what it's doing, is that's adapting to an existing package unit and making it work on a new one. So it's going to move the air, passageways in weird directions, and it's going to cause higher than normal total external static pressure, reducing the airflow to the unit. So the more you can get away from curb adapters, the better their equipment's going to be, because I can pretty much guarantee that the ductwork's messed up in the attic too. So adding that curb adapters, adding even more issues to the already messed up ductwork. At least that's how it works for me. So let's see. Okay, we're good there. So why is it, in my, actually, let's get back to the ice machine thing. So have I considered using press style fittings when I'm doing the ice machine repairs? Yeah, a press fitting doesn't really make sense in an ice machine because the valves are not press ready. Okay. And the amount of space inside of an ice machine is so minimal that you're not going to be able to cut fittings out and use press fittings. It's just not very practical for the most part in an ice machine. Same thing in like a reaching cooler and stuff. It gets a little difficult to use press style fittings. Now, I fully trust a press fitting if it's installed properly and the pipe is prepped, but you also have to be practical. They don't always make sense in every situation. So that's why, people have asked me, am I going to start pressing everything versus brazing? No. It just depends on what the situation calls for. If I'm doing a walk-in cooler install and it's really awkward to get some of the spots brazed, yeah, I might use press fittings. I've used them on several jobs. They work just fine. But it's all about the prep. But I'm not going to pretend like a press fitting is going to save me a crap ton of time. Not necessarily. In my experience, if you're really following all the installation instructions and doing everything properly, press fittings aren't necessarily going to save you time. You know, it might just be more convenient in some situations. So, you know, I'm going to press or braze from this point forward, both of them, and it just depends on the situation. So, let's see. Corey's computer repair. Yeah, you got to understand, man. These questions are cruising by. So, did you put your question in caps lock? Did I see it? I have no idea, bud. If I missed your question, feel free to shoot me an email to hvacrvideos@gmail.com. Yeah, I don't know where your question is. It got totally lost in the mix. That's why you guys got to keep posting them if you guys have a question, if I miss it. So, yeah, you try putting it in there again, or feel free to shoot me an email to hvacrvideos@gmail.com. Okay. Let's see. Have I worked on any train Voyagers with the Symbio controllers? No, not yet. I have not. I know Jason Johnson has, but yeah, no, I have not. Let's see. Aaron G said, starting to think he needs a new truck. Any suggestions on a model? Man, that really depends on, you know, who your mechanic is. Just like with an air conditioning unit, who's your mechanic and what does he like working on? Majority of the time if you buy a brand new vehicle, it's still going to be under warranty. So you're probably going to go through the dealership. Is there a dealership near you? I mean, there's a lot of variables that go into selecting a truck and what type. I'm partial to Chevy trucks and Chevy vans, but I mean, I have other cars too. I have a Japanese car for my wife and Japanese car for my daughter. So, you know, it just depends. All right, let me see what else. Just started a new huge account where a hot permit is needed and a fire watch, says Mike B. You know, in certain situations, press fittings might be what you need to use in that. So, okay. So let's go through this. Okay, I already answered those questions. So I also recently had a video where the title of the video was the exhaust fan was not working. This was a Fry exhaust in a restaurant, and I went out to it and it had a ECM motor inside of it. And what I found was that the motor was malfunctioning. I noticed that the motor, I wasn't able to catch it on camera. It's really sad how sometimes that works, but I shut the fan down, and when I when I got there, it wasn't working. I spun the wheel and then the fan started running. It was like it just needed to be spun to get going. And then once it got going, I didn't want to shut it down again because the customer was already cooking. They never stopped cooking, which was annoying because I tell them to when their hoods go down, but that's a whole nother story for another day, or hold another conversation for another day. But regardless, I found the unit had a bad motor. We got it up and running temporarily, and we actually had to go out 2 times to restart that motor for them. We told them, don't shut it off, and we kept having to go back out there just to spin it to get it going, right? Clint, thank you so very much for that super chat. I really do appreciate you. Clint says, Chris makes the Monday night drive home better. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to come over here. And thank you, Clint, for always being an amazing viewer of this channel. And you're always very active in the comments and everything. So thank you very much, my friend. I do appreciate you. So, you know, the motor was an ECM motor and the motor had failed. There was something wrong inside of it. So I got a lot of people asking me for the same reason, why didn't I just replace the bearings inside the motor? Because I have no idea if the bearings were the problem. And in fact, I don't think the bearings were the problem. I think that there was something wrong electronically inside the motor. It's possible that the bearings were kind of dry because it did feel kind of weird when I first started spinning it. But once it got going, it was running. I think that there was something electronically wrong within that motor. When I went to go replace it, when I walked up to it, I pointed the camera out and I said, do you hear that noise? The motor was going on, off, on, off, on, off. And it was still spinning, but it wasn't spinning 100%. And then it just stopped working right in front of me, right? It was kind of funny that it happened the moment that I went there to replace it. But I think there was something wrong with that motor. But I get a lot of people asking me all the time, how come I don't just replace bearings in a motor? Like, why replace the whole motor? What's the point? I'm wasting the customer's money. I'm just trying to rip the customers off. This is what everybody tells me, okay? You got to think about it like this. An exhaust fan is not something to experiment with. I mentioned in the video, this particular restaurant only has 2 exhaust fans. They have one over their grill and they have one over their fryers. If either one of those goes down, they can't cook. They can't do what they have to do. It's not a time to experiment with a motor. It'd be one thing if it was a bathroom exhaust fan. You know, I guess you could experiment with that and try to put bearings in it. But most of the time, okay, these motors are sitting on the roof. We live in a desert. They're overheating. It's cooking the windings inside the motor. If one of my employees tries to pull one of those apart to put bearings on it, right, and then puts it back together and then it doesn't work on an exhaust fan for their fryers, that's a problem. There's no point. It's not worth the liability for us as a company to go in there and try to change bearings. If this was a giant 100 horsepower motor, yeah, it might be practical to have bearings replaced on a 100 horsepower motor, okay? Instead of having to take the motor out of service completely. Who knows, okay? But you have to think logically with this stuff. These customers need this equipment. It needs to run. They don't have time to play experimentation. Frankenstein over here trying to rebuild bearings on a tiny 1 horsepower motor. That just doesn't seem practical. Who knows what's going to happen when we try to pull that motor apart? And mind you, I have that motor. It's sitting in my van. I do plan on taking it apart on the bench right here and seeing if I can identify anything that's going on in the motor. I suspect there's going to be electrical damage inside the motor and not just a bearing issue. I don't doubt that the bearings are worn out, but I don't think that's the only issue with the motor. So, Matt Woodbridge says AAA Motors in Anaheim rebuilds motors. Yeah, that is 100% correct. We also have a motor rebuilder out here. There used to be a AAA Motors in Riverside, but they actually closed down. And then a bunch of the employees from AAA in Riverside went to a company called Wright Supply, and Wright Supply does motor rebuilding and rewinding and all that stuff, I believe, too. They're in Ontario. But yeah, you can get motors rebuilt, but nobody's going to get a 1 horsepower ECM motor rebuilt. I just don't think that that's feasible for the price. So, all right, let's see. Alex T says changing motor bearings is just not practical. No. And you know what? We have enough things as a refrigeration and air conditioning company to have to worry about. I work on enough pieces of equipment that my guys, I don't need to complicate their jobs by adding bearing replacements into it, because to change bearings, you got to pull that whole motor out anyways. I mean, you're going to have to pull the complete motor out, pull the end caps off, get in there, replace both the bearings. It probably won't take long once you pull both the end caps off and then put it back together. If you can even pull the end caps off of that ECM motor, who knows? We'll find out when I pull it apart. But the point that I'm trying to make is it's all about liability. And these customers, you know, it costs a lot of money for us to go out there, and it's downtime. You know, we only have a small window of time. A bunch of people asked me about that video too, because on the bottom side of the direct drive motor, before the wheel, there's like a base plate, and that base plate had a bunch of grease on it. And people were asking me, why didn't I clean that grease off? I'm such a hack because I didn't clean the grease off. First off, right, I don't have the tools to clean grease off, okay? If I do a job, I want to do it 100%. And if I can't do it 100%, I'd rather not even start to mess with it, okay? I don't have the chemicals to break the grease down. I don't want to be washing that grease down the drains, okay? It's possible that I could have hit the grease off with a hammer and stuff, and it would have, you know, whatever. It was cold. It might have come off. But we have a very small window, and I was there, and I had to have that exhaust fan up and running in just a couple hours. I didn't have time to sit there and try to scrub that thing down and deal with it. It's just not something that I had time to do, because that customer needed that exhaust fan up and running, you know, in a short amount of time. That particular customer, they don't get there super early in the morning. And again, these are all things that we can schedule, but I had no idea it was going to be that dirty, right? Or I would have told them I need you there at 6 a.m. so we could pull it apart if I was going to do that. But that wasn't part of the plan. That wasn't what I was there to do. I was there to put a motor on it and get it going. And that's what I did. So yeah, I would like to have cleaned that base plate off, but you know, it's okay. It's not going to hurt the operation of the motor. So it's all good. All right, let's see what else we got going on in the chat. Has anyone run out of nitrogen and used air out of your spare tire for a leak search? No, Nasty. Never heard that before. So sometimes cleaning grease off, especially if on the wheel, you can throw the balance off and cause the motor problems. Steve from Everything HVACR, that is a really good point. So if you have a severely, especially if they're aluminum wheels on an exhaust fan, if you have a severely impacted wheel that is just coated in grease, that grease over time can build up on that wheel, and the centrifugal forces of that motor spinning, that wheel can actually self-balance itself with the grease. I know this sounds crazy, but it can happen. And when you clean off the grease, sometimes this can happen on blower wheels too, for like ACs and things. When you go to clean them, you'll put them back together, and next thing you know, the thing's shaking off the roof. And I know when I do it, I'm not taking weights off, because also on those blower wheels, oftentimes there's a weight to counterbalance an out of balance situation, right? Because they'll balance those wheels when they're running. They'll put like little weights in different spots. So I know when I'm cleaning those things, the weights aren't falling off or anything. But sometimes if they're severely impacted, yeah, when you put them all back together after you've cleaned them, those things will shake themselves off the roof because they're completely out of balance now. So you got to be very careful. And as a technician, you have to know when you look at something, you're like, that's not worth cleaning, you know? Now, exhaust wheels for exhaust fans, those are meant to handle grease. So for the most part, unless it's like severely impacted, you can clean those and they'll be just fine. But that is a great point to make, Steve, for sure. All right. Shoulder season sucks. How do you stay busy, says Aaron G. Yeah, that is a struggle. In the past, we would always stay busy through the shoulder season because the customers were doing routine maintenances, and that was keeping us in the building, maintaining the equipment. You know, we'd tell our guys to spend a little more time on maintenance, but some of these customers, man, they've just canceled maintenances completely. So this was kind of a rough year for us as far as like how slow it got. I mean, everybody still got their hours and everybody was fine. So, you know, we just kind of planned for that stuff. One of my major customers actually just called me today and said they were starting up routine maintenance again. So that'll be good. But this time the routine maintenance they want us to do is like ridiculously insane. They want us to spend 16 hours for a refrigeration maintenance at a restaurant. I'm like, okay. I mean, if that's what you want me to do, I'll spend 16 hours there. I'll be finding stuff to do. Like 16 hours, but they want 16 hours on a refrigeration maintenance. They want 16 hours on a rooftop maintenance. And then they still want filter changes too. So I'm like, yeah, give it to me. We'll spend days there cleaning everything. We'll be taking those ACs apart, you know, doing whatever we got to do. But how to keep busy during shoulder season, you know, it's just about communicating with your customers and hopefully, you know, pushing installs and replacements and stuff to the slow seasons. That's one thing to kind of help yourself a little bit. If you could flow nitrogen in an open circuit, would you still need to replace the filter dryer? It's still best practice. Yes. Yes. It would still be a good idea to change the filter dryer no matter what, because the desiccant in the filter dryer can start to absorb the moisture out of the air. Yes, if you're flowing nitrogen, that's a great thing, but there's still going to be a chance of some sort of contamination happening within that filter dryer. I guess it's arguable that if you did everything by the book, maybe you could get away without changing the filter dryer, but I mean, it's cheap insurance. If you have a system that's open, changing the filter dryer basically only takes you 30 minutes and the cost of the dryer, which isn't that much. But if you have a plugged up filter dryer on an operating system, it can take 5 to 6 hours, depending on how big of a system it is, you know, to replace that filter dryer. And that's a lot of money versus when you have it already open. So it's just easy best practices, I would suggest. So let's see what else. Do I think the minimum wage increase will affect restaurants, workers, and or techs at any capacity? Yeah, Joe, 100%. So Joe, HVACR North, is one of the co-hosts of the HVAC Overtime Show with us. And I was talking to Joe today, and which is crazy, in Southern California, officially today, April 1st, minimum wage for fast food workers of restaurant chains, fast food chains that have, I think it's more than 50 locations, or is it 500 locations? There's a strict criteria on it. But minimum wage went up to $20 an hour, which is insane. Okay. It went from $16 an hour to $20 an hour for fast food workers. The interesting thing is it didn't go up for everybody else in the state of California. It just went up for fast food restaurants with, you know, big chains that had large amounts of stores. Is that going to affect restaurants? 100% it's going to affect restaurants, because the law only makes fast food restaurants that have X number of chains raise their minimum wage. But how is a restaurant chain going to maintain their cooks, right, if the fast food places are paying them more money? So yeah, it's going to be a problem. But the fast food places are only going to give them so many hours. most of the time, if you get into the higher end restaurants, they're paying their employees, the cooks, more than $20 an hour anyways. Those guys are getting paid some decent money. But still, yeah, the minimum wage increase is going to affect everybody because restaurant prices and fast food prices are going to go through the roof. People aren't going to go there. Like, it's just going to be a giant dumpster fire. All right. Let me read through the chat. What am I missing? 16 hours. That's great. You got paid. Oh, wow. Joe says he got paid $10K to do a 2-day maintenance. That's pretty crazy, man. Let's see what else we got going on in the chat right now. Fast food isn't a career. We shouldn't be trying to make it one. Freon, Leon. I mean, dude, you're beating a dead horse with that one, man. There's lots of us. Fast food restaurants will just cut hours, lay people off, and charge more for food. That's 100% true, Mike. 100% true. Higher wages cause cut hours and people to take home less. 100% agree with that, man. I'm 100% agree. We could talk about that day or that crap for days, man. It's just nuts. Steve J. So Wendy's backed off of that. He said it's going to be fine. Wendy's is just going to change the price whenever they want. Yeah, Wendy's backed off of that because they had so much backlash. Wendy's said, oh, that was a mistake. It was a misunderstanding. We were saying that we weren't going to raise our prices. We were going to lower our prices to get people in the door. I don't think that's what they intended from the beginning, but that's what they're saying they're going to do now. So I'm reading through the chat, seeing what I'm missing here. Oh, great question. So this was one from one of the viewers on the exhaust fan, and this is something that I get. Fong Fam, thank you very much for becoming a channel supporter. I really do appreciate that, my good friend. So in a recent video, the exhaust fan video, someone said, why, if I thought the exhaust fan had bad bearings, why didn't I just drop some oil on the shaft? Okay. These are not sleeve bearings. These are actual ball bearings inside these motors. Okay. So dripping oil on the shaft might help you temporarily, but it's not going to solve a problem. If you have a bad bearing inside of that, that is usually ball bearings inside those motors, and they're totally enclosed, and there's no way to service them or oil them or grease them. So adding oil to it is not necessarily going to, it might give you a temporary fix, but it's not going to solve your problem. So, all right. So we got that. So, what? I lost my train of thought there for a minute. I have a brain fart, like just brain fog, just whoa. It was a long day. So today I did a walk-in cooler door install at a restaurant, and it was a mess as usual. Seems like the last couple walk-in cooler doors that I've done and walk-in freezer doors have turned out to be a dumpster fire. But this one, I almost sent the door back because we had made some incorrect measurements. It had nothing to do with the manufacturer, and the door didn't fit, and it was a mess. But we were able to modify it on site. And so we did a bolt-on door, right? So it's a wood door frame, and you put it into, up against the existing door. I actually had to cut the door frame with a circular saw, cut 1.5 inches off of one side of the door frame, and do a bunch of finagling to get it to fit in there. When it was all said and done, it looked like we intended it for it to be that way. It was like perfect, but it just took a bit of frustration in that moment when I first got there, because the first thing I did at the shop, I didn't order the door. I didn't measure it or anything. First thing I did at the shop was I grabbed the order form and I verified that the door matched what we had ordered, okay, at the shop. So then we loaded it in our trailer. We drove to the job site, and then I went in there and I measured the existing door or the existing walk-in opening, and I realized right then and there, this door wasn't going to work. And then I started to think in my head, what do? Do we send the door back? If we send the door back, we were going to be out basically $3,000 or $2,000 or whatever that door costs. I don't know. Customer bought it themselves, but because we were the ones that measured it, right? So we made a mistake. So I was like, well, we're going to be out the door, and we're going to be out the cost of the door. And my thought was, why not try to modify the door? If I can modify the door, it's not going to fit anywhere else anyways, because it was custom made. So it's like, why not try, And so that's what we did. Instead of panicking and freaking out, I stopped, I collected my thoughts, I measured a few things, and I said, let's try this. So we ended up cutting the door frame. And once we cut the door frame, we put it up there, and everything, kind of fell in place and worked out the way it was supposed to be. So ended up being a decent job. And the whole point of that was, when I realized something wasn't going to work, I didn't panic. I stopped. I thought about it. I said, I rationalized, okay, we're probably going to have to buy a new door for this customer. It's probably going to end up being our cost because we were the ones that measured it and we measured it wrong. So at this point, trying to modify that door, the existing one that was wrong, I was going to lose that money if we had to send it or if we had to order a new door anyways. So why not give it a shot, right? So that's what we did. So I think it's important sometimes when we are walking up to these jobs, and I try to tell people, I tell my employees and tell people that are asking me questions, if you walk up to something and you're truly struggling with it and you're struggling for more than 10, 15 minutes, and you just can't figure it out, you're probably doing something wrong or you're probably overthinking it, right? You need to stop, take a break, relax, collect your thoughts, and look at it from a different angle. Look at it, after you grab something to eat or something like that. And that's what we did today. This could have been a disaster, but it ended up being okay. And everything turned out great. And, when we were done with it, you couldn't even tell. And we don't have to do anything to modify it besides what I did by cutting the frame. And it all worked out. Stop, think, make a good decision. A service tech's motto. 100%, man. 100%. Let's see what else. Do I ever use Freon coming from China, and what are my thoughts? Thank you. I have no idea where the refrigerant I buy, but I buy name brand refrigerant from reputable supply houses. I don't know where it's coming from. I have no idea, but it's not aftermarket. It's not black market. It's not any of that weird crap. Okay. It's ChemWars. It's Honeywell. It's Arkema. It's name brand stuff from supply houses that are going to be there. If something's wrong with the refrigerant, I'm going to be able to take it back. I'm not buying in bulk, ordering it online from somebody that I have no way to return that refrigerant if there's something wrong with it. I'm only buying from reputable sources because, again, yeah, I might have to, I'm sure I can buy it on the black market for a lot cheaper and risk going to jail or getting in trouble and maybe make a crap ton of money, but it's not worth it for me because the people that I buy it from are there if something goes wrong. Right? I find out that it doesn't have the right amount of refrigerant in it. I take it back and say, I want a new drum. And they give me a whole new drum. We don't mess around. So we're not over here trying to make a quick buck. We're just doing honest work, and we're buying parts and equipment from reputable people. And that's just what we do. Except that one time I tried barbecue propane. Yeah. So, but I never used that. That was an experiment. I bought it because a bunch of people told me you can buy R290 online. And I was like, that doesn't make sense. And I bought some from a company that says it's R290 for refrigeration systems. And then when I got it to my house, it smells like barbecue propane. It still had the odor added to it. That is not usable in a refrigeration system, or it's not usable. I don't feel comfortable using that. Now, there's some people out there that use that stuff. More power to you. I'm not doing that stuff. We're only using stuff bought from the supply house. So, Big Nate says he works for a supplier. Some parts are super out of stock. Yeah, there's some things that are out of stock, and there's still supply chain issues for sure. So definitely. Reading through. Does California really have a blackout problem? So California's problem is overhyped a little bit more than what's actually happening. Okay, but we have a massive amount of people in a very small area of Southern California. California in general is a huge state, right? It can take me probably from the bottom of California to get to the top, probably driving right through the middle all the way through to the top will take me 10 plus hours to drive through the state of California, doing 80 miles an hour the whole way. Okay. California is huge, maybe even longer than that. It is a long drive through California. Okay. Then you add traffic into there, and that 10 plus hours can probably turn into 24 hours if you're going through metro cities and stuff. Okay. But we have a large amount of people in a small area. The state of California, for the most part, the southern part of California is a desert climate. We don't have, adequate amounts of water in the state to satisfy the population. We don't have adequate means of creating electricity because we've taken the nuclear option off the table in California. So we rely on our power coming from burning natural gas and from hydroelectric power from dams, basically. Okay. And when that happens, basically during peak times in the summer, our energy demand is higher than the supply that we have. And so they will oftentimes tell people to reduce electricity consumption, turn off appliances, only use your air conditioner between these hours, only wash your clothes between these hours. And it all has to do with the amount of people we have in a small area and the demand for power. So do we have a blackout problem? Yeah, we do have oftentimes rolling blackouts and different things. Now, my area doesn't necessarily get affected by rolling blackouts due to energy demand. For the most part, my area gets affected by blackouts because of fire concerns. Basically, they'll turn off the power if there's fire concerns. Corey's computer repair. Appreciate the super chat. And to keep anyways, but yeah, thank you very much. I realize you were trying to get a question in there. Yeah. You just got to keep reposting those questions. I appreciate the super chat, but you didn't have to do that just to get your question answered. But thank you very much for that. I do appreciate that. How do I handle customers who insist on having me cut corners and get existing failing equipment going rather than replacing it, doing the job correctly the first time? I will address that in just a minute when I finish answering the other guy's question. Okay. So, but as far as the power grids and the blackouts and stuff, yeah, it's a little more overhyped, by the media than what's really happening. But yeah, we do have issues. And, we have an older power grid. So in some areas we have low voltage conditions. I can see, on a 208 3-phase service coming into a building, I can sometimes see 190 volts of power coming into it. That's right at the threshold of being too low. 186 is like the minimum. But even for new electronic equipment with circuit boards and VFDs and ECM motors, oftentimes they don't even let you go 20% below supply. They want to see like 10% below supply. So 192 is like actually below what a lot of the VFD manufacturers and different manufacturers, circuit board manufacturers want you to have at some of the equipment. So it does run into issues for sure. So Corey, you're asking, how do customers affect my operations? Basically, if I have a customer that wants to be cheap, how do I deal with that when I know that it needs to be fixed properly? First and foremost, it is the customer's equipment. So I'll do anything the customer wants me to do within reason, as long as I can document my concerns and my suggestions. If I think something's a bad idea, I'm going to document it. I'm going to communicate it with the customer. I'm going to let them know I think this is a bad idea. And if they insist that I proceed with this, I make sure that they know up front, I am charging you for my time and you are going to have to pay this invoice. If this doesn't work like I say it's not going to work. I've never really run into that situation. I mean, there's been some things that I've told the customer, I don't think this is a good idea. And then, sometimes it's bit them in the butt. Sometimes it's worked out okay and just not, became an issue. But for me, it's all about documentation and communication. If a customer doesn't want to fix something the way that I want it fixed, that's fine. It's their money, but I'm definitely going to document it. And they're going to know that this is not the way that I wanted to do this. And if the results don't meet their expectations, they still got to pay me for my time. And we'll make sure that they understand that and sign off on whatever they need to sign off to get that done. So Matt Woodbridge says it took him 4 hours for an after hours call from Tustin to Pasadena. Yeah, bro. I don't do those kind of routes. Tustin to Pasadena is a nightmare, bro. Like, I'll tell you what, Matt. I used to service a customer in Long Beach at the downtown Long Beach where Restaurant Row's at, right on the water. I used to service a customer down there, and I would service a customer in La Quinta, California, right, which is way out in the low desert, Palm Springs area. And it probably happened at least 4 times where I'd be finishing my day in La Quinta, and then you'd get an overtime emergency service call for a walk-in cooler in Long Beach. And I would call the customer and be like, it is legit going to take me 4 hours to get from La Quinta to Long Beach, right? Are you sure this is an emergency? Oh my gosh, some of those things. But we ended up letting go of those customers that are out there. But Tustin to Pasadena, man, yeah, that's a nightmare, dude. That is a nightmare. The sad thing for the people that are watching this that don't understand, to get from Tustin, California to Pasadena, California with no traffic, 35 minutes, 40 minutes at the most with no traffic. Matt's saying it took him 4 hours today. And it's not even gridlock traffic. It's just getting busy. Right now is the true gridlock at 5 p.m. So yeah, that's rough, man. That is rough for sure. All right, let's see what else we got. You spoke to an engineer in South Carolina, says Roger, and he says California is booming, commercial and infrastructure. Well, California has always booming. People say booming. You know, there's new construction going on out here, but the issue is we don't have, you know, a lot of water. That's our biggest issue. We're overpopulating this place, and we're relying on deals that we made with the Colorado River water system, you know, 100 years ago, and we're still making them, you know, give us the water. It's just a giant mess. So let's see what else we got going on in the chat right now. It's funny with traffic. Indianapolis is about to find out with this dumb eclipse. Oh yeah, 500,000 to 1 million more. Yeah, for sure. Let me see. I don't like residential. No, I mean, residential is just not what we do. Our business is not set up for residential. My employees wouldn't even know, you know, it would be a whole culture shock for them to start doing residential work. It's just a whole different dynamic. So, oh, Corey, thank you very much again, man, for that super chat. That is amazing. I really do appreciate you, man. Thank you very much. And thank you for watching, dude. Full-time market tech, Michael says, looking to go on your own. How do you make the jump between on-call hours and emergency services? On-call hours and emergency services. How do you make the jump? I don't know if I quite understand your question, Michael, but I'll talk a little bit about that. So if you're thinking about going on your own and you're a market tech, what you're going to realize, like, what kind of work are you going to do? Are you going to do like commercial, or are you going to do refrigeration? Are you looking to do market work? It's going to be hard to break into the market side because the big giant companies just make it too difficult. But yeah, I'm curious. Emerson Chavez, again, thank you very much for that super chat, man. I really do appreciate that. What speed should be expected of a junior tech during calls? Just started 2 months ago and you don't have that speed the other techs have, but you get it done. Emerson, it's okay. So for me, and it all depends on the business and how the business is ran. I don't like to put pressure on technicians unless I feel like they're underperforming. Okay. Every technician is different. And the speed that one technician gets a call done isn't necessarily the speed that another technician is going to get the call done. I'm experienced, super experienced in the type of work that I do. So clearly I can get a call done much faster than one of my other technicians, but I don't fault him for that. That's because I have experience and I'm willing to take chances and cut corners sometimes that I, you know, feel comfortable cutting, versus other technicians that don't want to cut corners because they want to make sure they're super thorough. So for my less experienced technicians, it's not a matter of pressure. It's not a matter of telling them they need to move faster. Now there's a point in time, but not in a 2-month point. You're not anywhere near, you know, once you hit the year mark or maybe 1.5 to 2 year mark, that's when we're going to sit down and have a discussion about you speeding up your work and starting to learn how to multitask and get multiple things done. But within starting to at least the 1 year mark, I'm not pressuring technicians to move. Like, it's just a matter of learning how to get the job done properly. Once they learn how to get it done properly, then they learn how to speed up that process and still get it done properly. So it's just going to take time for you to get comfortable and get to that point. Don't try to rush and don't try to speed up because other technicians can do it faster. You work your fastest while still getting the job done super thorough with absolutely no callbacks. And eventually you'll get to the point where you realize, let's give an example. You walk up to a walk-in cooler, okay? You walk up to a walk-in cooler and you find out that that walk-in cooler is warm inside the box, okay? So as you haven't even gone on the roof yet. You walk inside the box and you just observe and you listen. And you hear a noise. You hear a hissing, a slight hollow hissing sound. And as you're inside the box, you pop your head up there. You look to see if it's iced up. It's not iced up. You look to see if all the fan motors are working. They're all working. You pop your head, you know, and you hear the hissing sound. Now, if you go directly up onto the roof and find that it's a refrigerant related problem, okay, maybe it is. You add refrigerant, you know, whatever, you find the leak, you fix the leak, you get all done, and you turn the system back on, you fix it, it's running, it's coming down to temp. You tell the customer to keep an eye on it. It'll be down to temp in a couple hours, and you bounce, right? You go home. And then your service manager calls you and he says, the restaurant's calling. Now they're saying that the box is getting too cold. Okay. So you go back out there and you look at it. And what you find is that the temperature controller is set to negative 20 degrees, but it's a walk-in cooler. Well, what had happened was the customer thought they were going to try to fix their own work. And so they turned the temp control down, because turning it colder makes it work faster, right? Because people just don't understand that stuff, right? Now, had you checked the temp control when you were there originally, you had no reason to check the temp control, but experience has told you that sometimes customers like to tweak on things, right? So as you get more experience, you walk into that same situation and you start thinking and you start listening to the customer. So when I walked into that box and I heard that hissing sound and I looked for ice, and then I popped my head up and I looked at the temp control and I saw that it was set to negative 20. That's odd. So before I fix it, I go to the manager and I say, hey, did you mess with that temp control? Oh yeah, we tried to turn it colder. Okay, cool. Hey, future, turning it colder is not going to make it work better. Please don't do that. It's just going to add more headaches to our calls, but I'll get it fixed for you. So now you know when you're done fixing that leak, you need to come downstairs and set the temp control. So it's just experience and knowing what to expect, right? And with time, that will come. And you will be able to speed up and become a faster, more efficient tech with time. Don't try to rush. Just get it done. And you're going to learn over time. If you have a supportive company, they're going to help you through that process, and they're going to give you encouragement, and they're going to tell you when you're doing good. If you don't have a supportive company, well, maybe you need to find a better one. That's my 2 cents on the matter. So, reading through the chat. I'm getting after hours calls all the time, run off of caffeine and hate. Oh yeah, for sure. So, depends on their phone use. Yeah, reading through the chat. All right. Cool. Well, guys, I really do appreciate you. And it is time to wrap this up, because I got home from that door install, literally walked in, changed, came right in here. I need to go relax. It's been a long day. I do appreciate you guys. Remember, I am going to go live with the HVAC School YouTube channel on Wednesday. I think it's at 6 p.m. Yeah, 6 p.m. Pacific time, 9 p.m. East Coast time, I think. We're going to be talking about commercial HVACR maintenance on package units and split systems. There's a couple other people on there. I don't know if Brian's going to be there or not. I'm pretty sure Adam will be there. It should be a good time, so definitely come out the stream. If I'm not an idiot and I can figure it out, I might stream on my channel too, but I don't know if I can figure that stuff out, so we'll have to see. I really do appreciate you guys. Remember also Friday evening, the HVAC Overtime YouTube channel. Good guy, thank you so very much for that super chat, man. That is awesome. You guys are so awesome with this support. Thank you so very much. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to my channel. And also, if you guys are interested in purchasing any tools, go to truetechtools.com. Use my offer code BIGPICTURE. That's one word. At checkout, you should get an 8% discount on most of the items on their website. And when you use my affiliate code or my offer code, I actually get a small commission from that. Another great way to help support the channel. You know anybody else that wants to purchase tools, tell them to use the offer code. It'll get them a nice little discount, and it's just a great way to support the channel. So again, thank you so very much. I really do appreciate you. I'm going to cue up the outro music, and we will definitely catch you guys on the next one. Why are you still here? You're not supposed to be here anymore. The picture's gone and the music's gone and you're not supposed to still be here. So you got to like move on. It's time to go. I got nothing else. I'm starting to lose my voice from talking. It's kind of dry outside and my office is a mess. So unless someone wants to come help me clean this office, y'all need to go. You need to bounce and move on. All right, go home. I got nothing else for you. You're not wanted here anymore. Like, you just got to go. You got to go.